What dirty little secret of someone else's have you been dying to tell? I'm a member of one of those ladies' groups. At one meeting, a woman was showing photos from a family member's wedding. Not really my thing, but you nod and say ooh and aw. She pointed out a photo of an older woman, let's call her Sally, and a young man saying, "This is Sally and her husband." She stared at the photo for a beat, then added, "He's also her son." What? It turns out she is indeed married to her biological son, and for some reason, the family doesn't see a problem with it. They went to the courthouse and got a license, so it must be legal. Presumably, they never told the clerk they were mother and son. The story goes that Sally had a child she gave up for adoption. Years later, she met him as a young man. They fell in love and got married. From what I recall, both parties knew they were related before their romantic involvement. As far as I could tell, the entire family was a train wreck. I fell out of touch with the storyteller years ago, so I don't know if they're still married or if anyone outside the family figured out the truth. The woman telling the story was very disturbed, as they were part of her husband's family. Just when you think you've heard it all. Story 2. An old co-worker of mine had her live-in mother pass away peacefully at home in bed. This woman then saran wrapped her mother to the bed for over a year to keep collecting old age payments. Neighbors called the police because of the smell. The mother's body had fused to the bed, so they had to remove a wall and carry her out on the mattress she was stuck to. This same woman also kept only a picture of Jesus on her desk and nothing else. Strange world indeed. Story 3. One night recently, my wife and I were hanging out at another couple's house. Both ladies are beautiful and make us two guys feel very lucky. At a very drunken point late in the night, he and I got up and went to the next room over to make drinks. We could still see the ladies, but they weren't facing us and were deep in conversation. While making cocktails, he and I exchanged a few innocent comments about how pretty they looked. Then, for some reason, I winked at him and said, "You want to see mine, Bear?" His eyes went wide. Yes, he responded. Over the next few minutes and a few other times when we were alone that night, we showed each other our wives' private pictures on our phones. I'd guess we showed each other around 40 or 50 pictures. No sending, just showing. All while they sat about 20 feet in front of us. It was ridiculous. I realize this is my secret, but it's his too, so I think it counts. Also no, I will not show the pictures for science, no matter how many people make that old joke. Story 4. My good friend's mum isn't actually her mum. Let's call my friend Jess, her mum Anne, and Anne's sister Ashley. Anne belittled Ashley her whole life. When Anne found out she couldn't have kids, she didn't tell anyone. When Ashley got pregnant with her then husband, Anne convinced Ashley she couldn't raise a baby, claiming she was mentally unstable or whatever, and the husband agreed after discovering the child wasn't actually his. So Anne raised Jess as her own. A few years went by, and Ashley and her husband had a couple more kids, his this time. He realized he loved his kids and felt guilty for giving Jess up, so he started visiting her. Eventually, he and Anne got together, but that wasn't enough for Anne. She decided to marry the husband and get custody of the other kids too. So, Jess, still young, knew these other kids as her cousins, and her mum's husband as her uncle. One day, she asked her mum who her real dad was. Anne actually told her the truth, pointing him out in their small town, the man her real mum Ashley had slept with. This is all very complicated, and I'm sure I'm missing some details. I found out when I was 15 and promised myself that if Jess didn't know by the time she was about 21, I would write her an anonymous letter. I never did. We're both 25 now. It's her birthday today. Story 5. A friend from high school now makes a living as a religious mommy blogger and motivational speaker for churches. She earns good money portraying them as a picture-perfect family who overcame their sinful beginnings through Christ. They had a shotgun marriage in high school because she got pregnant. In reality, they hate each other. She always has at least one boyfriend on the side. He got through college by having her do all his homework and fill him in on a few highlights so he could fake it in classes. Apparently, his major was more essay-oriented than test-oriented, so it was easier for him to rely on her. She did that, took care of their kids by herself, and worked full-time, all while being berated by their church for stepping outside her proper place in the home. Meanwhile, he ran off to hang out with friends, smoke, and see S-workers. He only recently got an actual job nearly a decade after finishing college, but he still spends all his money on drugs, S-workers, and goofing off. The household gets by on my friend's income. She's an absolute insufferable martyr and is the first to throw stones at anyone she perceives as putting up a less religious facade than she does. Story 6. The dirty laundry at my workplace is massive, from people doing drugs to extramarital affairs, spreading rumors, and even sabotaging coworkers to get them fired. It all happens. A few female coworkers exchange favors with supervisors for special privileges. There are cliques on each shift that align themselves with management to maintain power. When they see someone as a threat, an employee who outperforms them, or a prettier coworker who attracts a supervisor's attention, they work to get that person fired. They create false accusations, which management often acts on. The politicking at my job is like watching a royal court from days of old, people clamoring for power and favors, reducing their opponents to ash. I feel like if execution were an option, there would be blood on our hands. The skeletons are plentiful. Beyond the usual, who slept with who, darker things have happened. People accidentally maimed in machinery, walking out under threats, even a secret forced abortion. It may be the 21st century, but the old ways still apply. I just sit back, watch, and listen to all the corruption. I've tried to do the right thing, but it only leads to punishment. So, I do my job, stay out of the courtly affairs, and ally myself with the right people. It's sad. Story 7. A close friend of mine claims he's been doing it at least once a week since the beginning of the year, with girls who aren't his girlfriend. He says she's too innocent for physical intimacy and he doesn't want to hurt her, so he sleeps with other girls to meet his needs. I don't fully believe him, but he's had a rough time lately and has taken a darker turn. Disclaimer: I don't have any feelings for my friend's girlfriend. I'm just a very empathetic person. I have my own girlfriend, whom I love very much. Meanwhile, his girlfriend is completely head over heels for him. She talks about him constantly, defends him whenever our group teases him, and has never said anything bad about him. She is incredibly in love with him. She would most likely do it with him if he simply asked. If she knew the truth, it would break her heart. She's one of the kindest and most optimistic people I've ever met. She wouldn't hurt a fly, and I don't think I've ever heard her get angry or even swear. The worst part is that they are both going away for college and will be long distance, and he plans to break up with her so he can keep filling those needs of his. Every time I see that poor naive girl praise him and talk about what a good boyfriend he is, I die a little inside. Since the thread is a few hours old, I don't expect many people to see this, but honestly, I'm really hurting for the girl. She's way too nice for this. I don't have any feelings for my friend's girlfriend. I'm just a very empathetic person. I have my own girlfriend, whom I love very much. I'm not the only one who knows. My brother knows, and another friend of ours knows. My girlfriend knows as well. I'm not sure how many people he has told, but he bragged about it to people in one of his classes. He even boasted about it to my girlfriend. It's pretty messed up. Edit. Oh yeah, so they broke up in May after she found out. No surprise there. But the big twist is that he was cheating on her with men, specifically older men. He ended up spending the summer at a roommate's house, paying rent in the form of S. The girl is fine now, and I'm still happily together with my girlfriend. Story 8. My sister was sleeping with her boss while in a relationship with another guy. The boss, let's call him M, got really drunk one night and decided to drive around her neighborhood, looking for her car to figure out where she lived. He went up to the door, and my sister's boyfriend, C, answered. M knew about C, but C didn't know about M. Belligerently drunk, M couldn't wait for them to get dressed and talk, so he barged inside. C grabbed a machete and began swinging it at M. The police were called, and blood was everywhere. M nearly lost a hand, lost a few teeth, and required stitches in his head. He's also facing charges, but C won't because he was defending his home. Moral of the story, don't sleep with two guys at the same time. Story 9. One time, my wife needed to use my phone. She browsed through my chat history and saw an old conversation in which a coworker was flirting with me. She assumed I had been cheating, and for the next 2 weeks, our marriage teetered on the edge of divorce. Eventually, she came to believe in my loyalty. That chat, though, might actually be one of the more innocent ones I've had on the subject. In 14 years of marriage, I've declined at least 3 intimate proposals from other women. Mostly I refused because I couldn't bear the burden of that lie, and maybe because I knew I couldn't meet the expectations of a casual mistress. Sometimes I'd like to tell my wife that I still have game and can be attractive enough to receive such proposals. But that would only hurt her, make her feel insecure, and make her assume the worst whenever I work late or go on a business trip. She would become paranoid, so I keep it to myself. I'd rather see her at ease, believing I'm invisible to other women, than try to prove my faithfulness by choice. Story 10. My old roommate used to bring over girls he met on Craigslist while he was dating the sweetest girl. I think they might still be together. I would have told her by now, but I still live in the same house, and I do not trust him not to break my windows or slash my tires. My old best friend is marrying his girlfriend this May. She has a very deep-rooted spirituality and believes 100% that she is the archangel Gabriel reincarnated. She says she has memories of many past lives and constantly talks to spirits and ghosts. Despite all that, she is very driven, has a high-paying job, and a solid outlook on advancing in her field. My friend used to complain to me constantly about how she was full of nonsense and how he could not stand all the spirit talk until he decided that he was the archangel Raziel reincarnated, and that the two of them had 200 or so past lives together, with this one just being another link in the chain. He started having these so-called memories of past lives, to the point where he claimed he was the creator of the universe and she was his first creation, and that he used to make galaxies for her to play with when she was young. It was painful to watch. He is a very manipulative person. She still does not know that he does not believe any of the things she says. I do not talk to him anymore, and she will not talk to me without repeating everything I say to him, so I do not talk to her either. I wish I could tell them, but I know it would turn into a massive shitstorm. I would be blamed for ruining everything, and they would both deny it, stay together, and end up mistrusting each other for a long time. She is just going to have to ride this one out until she realizes who he is for herself. Love is blind. Story 11. I had a friend in college who was a Southern guy and extremely religious, so devout that he would preach to us about how solo time was wrong and that he never did it. He was also very conservative, and we basically kept him around to expose him to the world. One of my friends decided to move into an apartment with him because he knew Dave, let's call him that, would be a calm roommate. No wild parties, no drug deals, no inappropriate activities on the living room couch. Basically, trouble-free. One day, I went over to my friend's apartment while Dave was in class. Dave had left his computer open, and my friend, being the programmer nerd he is, decided to snoop, just for fun, to see what was going on in Dave's ultra-conservative brain. Dave's PC was locked, but the password hint gave my friend the password. When he got in, Real Player was open. Now, this was 2013. Who even used Real Player then? One feature it had was a history of videos you had watched that were still in your downloads folder. We opened one video and saw extremely buff, tan, bodybuilder-type guys lifting weights in very short jean cutoffs. One was wearing a jean vest with nothing underneath, just doing bicep curls. When that video ended, we opened the next one. It had the same two guys, except one was rubbing oil on the other's biceps as he did curls, then moved down to his chest. That video ended as well. By this point, I was very concerned. It was the strangest thing I'd ever seen, even for the internet in 2013. We skipped ahead a few videos, and now jean jacket cutoffs bro had his jacket off. The other guy leaned him over the bed and poured more oil over his body. I was mortified, but we kept going. The final video showed oil bro with his cutoff bro. My friend shut off the video. We locked his computer and walked into the living room to talk it over. We didn't speak. We just stared at each other for a long time. How could this man, so anti-gay and conservative, actually be gay? It made sense very quickly. His family was extremely religious and conservative, and I'm sure it was confusing for him. Coming out simply wasn't an option. We decided we would never speak of it again, and we didn't. We continued hanging out with our friend. He would say homophobic things, and we would just exchange knowing looks. We weren't terrible people. We wouldn't spread it around. It was simply a very strange experience. He wouldn't be the first overly conservative, homophobic religious person I had met. I knew two other guys, both Southern and black, very conservative, who eventually turned out to be gay. It makes me wonder what kind of damage that level of sexual repression can have on the brain. Story 12. For many years, I worked with a woman, and we grew fairly close. We shared things about our private lives, went to each other for advice, and so on. Let's call her Ramona. Over the years, she caught her husband cheating multiple times and found out he had a child with another woman. Just really scum of the earth. She remained faithful and frustrated with the situation. Fun fact, he also worked at the same company as Ramona and me. Let's call him Ramona's husband. He went on a company trip along with many other employees, including one who should have been a neutral, responsible person, the voice of the employees. Let's call her Scummy. Guess who found love? Ramona's husband and Scummy. Fun fact, Scummy's husband also works for our company. Let's call him Scummy's husband. Scummy's husband works closely with Ramona's husband. Now that things were unfolding, this went on for quite some time behind everyone's backs. until suddenly both Ramona's husband and Scummy requested divorces around the same time. Before the divorces were even finalized, Ramona's husband and Scummy were already dating. Ramona was devastated that this had been happening behind her back. She even tried to reach out to Scummy's husband for answers, but he was obviously hurt and trying to distance himself from the situation. A reminder, all four of these people work for the same company. It was quite the scandal at the time, and only these four people knew, and me, since she trusted me and I was around to overhear the drama unfold. It was absolutely juicy, but I could never share it because she was one of my best friends, and I couldn't imagine breaking her trust like that. So, I kept this soap opera level drama to myself, thing I thought only happened in terrible rom-coms. Eventually, Ramona couldn't handle the situation any longer and transferred to one of our buildings out of state, which saddened me greatly. I loved having her around. She was like a wise older sister to me. Scummy and Ramona's husband had made her life miserable though, so I didn't blame her. Eventually, Ramona's husband was fired and Scummy quit. People were catching on to what had happened, lost respect for her, and treated her differently. She felt it was unfair. Snatching your employee's husband out from under her is unfair too, but I don't think that registered in her head. I wish Scummy luck, as he'll likely eventually go back to his old ways and she'll understand how Ramona felt. People like Ramona's husband do not change. Story 13. My best friend, who's an absolute jerk, got married when he was 19, I think. Before they got married, his fiancée was insanely paranoid that he was cheating. He was a ladies' man and always popular with the girls, so I could see why she was suspicious. But she was just an overly controlling, paranoid woman. She even dragged him to his mother to rat him out when she caught him watching porn. Truly a match made in heaven. Well, one baby and a nasty divorce 2 years later. I took him out to drink for his 21st birthday. There, drunkenly, he admitted to me and my brother what happened the night before the wedding. The night before, he got super drunk at a pre-wedding party. His family and bride-to-be weren't there. The bride's sister was, and she was smashed too. Somehow, they thought it was a good idea to hook up. Yep, my jerk friend slept with his bride-to-be sister the night before the wedding. He's just that dumb. Story 14. After spending the day drinking in town, the group split up. A few of us went back to our apartment while others stayed out. About 2 hours later, we got a call from one of my good friends. She said a couple of guys had come back to her apartment with her and another girl, and she wanted them gone. So I, along with two of her best friends, went over to escort them out, only to find a man and a female figure hiding bare on the couch. After stepping out confused, it took us a minute or two to realize that the girl on the couch was not the friend who had called us, but a girl they had invited out to spend more time with. She's married to a guy I've known for about a decade and is now pregnant. To make it worse, she is so flashy about her perfect married life on social media. My friends and I have never told a soul. Story 15. Susie told Timmy that Angela said she overheard Erica last week admitting she had a crush on Ben, but I just spoke to Whitney, who is Erica's best friend, and she says Erica doesn't like Ben at all and actually wants Timmy to ask her to the dance, which is why she turned down Brock. Susie definitely knows this because she was in the same study hall with Erica right after it happened, and now she's obviously trying to sabotage Erica and Timmy, probably because of that whole thing with Chris. Story 16. One night, my boss left to go home. I was still working when I heard a phone buzz to my left. I looked over and realized he had left his phone behind. I assumed the buzzing might be him using his wife's phone to try to locate it or something similar. I picked it up, and instead of it being my boss, it was an email reply to a male-for-male Craigslist ad looking for a femboy. That was about 3 months ago. A couple of weeks later, my boss was talking to a patient on his phone and handed it to me so I could schedule an appointment. When I hit end call, a Yahoo instant message popped up, asking if he was a thick comer. At that point, I was pretty certain my boss was looking for men online. Then, a few weeks after that, I was using his phone again, and this time the message was addressed to Sir and said, "From your dress-up doll." My boss is a prominent doctor in the community and married to a woman. As far as I know, I am the only person aware of this besides him, and presumably his boyfriend or submissive partner. I just hope his wife knows. Story 17. I know a girl who is a stay-at-home wife, and she handles the finances in a very unfair way. She manages them in a way that makes me almost certain she plans to leave her husband in a few months. They are both clients with separate accounts. The money comes from their bank. Whether it's hers, his, or a joint account doesn't matter. The deposits go directly into her portfolio, and if she feels like putting some into his, she can. I started seeing red flags about a year ago when most of the money kept staying in her accounts. including her declining my suggestion to contribute to his tax advantage savings since hers were already maxed out. Naturally, I asked him if he wanted to max his out, but I can't tell him what's happening in her accounts. He simply tells me that his wife handles the finances and that I should talk to her for anything related to that. The firm sends statements every month. Whether he reads them or understands them isn't something I can get involved in. About 80% of their money is now in her accounts, and she has been withdrawing between $5,000 and $10,000 every month for the past 4 months, while his accounts haven't changed at all. My suspicion is that she's keeping the money in cash. On paper, it will look like she has nothing, while he does. Again, this is a bit of speculation, but not entirely. The moral of the story is to never let one person have full control of your finances. If you use the same portfolio manager, don't deposit everything into one person's account and let them distribute it as they see fit. For everyone saying I should tell him or asking whether I have a legal obligation to do so, I don't. In fact, I have a legal obligation not to tell him. As for anonymously warning him, what do you think I'm trying to do right now? Posting a vague scenario on a public platform like Reddit is about as close as I can get. Share it if you want, but at the very least, don't let this happen to you. Story 18. A friend of mine has never been in a relationship and always claims he has never wanted one. A few years ago, he got really blackout drunk and told me that the loneliness has basically killed him on the inside and he's just waiting to die. He's a good person, kind, humble, and respectful. Ever since he told me that, every time he jokes about relationships or the topic comes up and he puts on that confident grin saying he doesn't want one and that nothing would ever work out, that sentence echoes in my head. He just changes the subject and moves on, and I don't think he remembers ever telling me. Story 19. I once walked a very drunk friend home to his dorm room in college, and just before he got inside, he pooped himself. Like all over himself and all over the floor, it was insane. He was drunk and crying, totally mortified. But I got him to the toilet, and while he was in there, I cleaned everything up. Nobody saw a thing. I got him back to his room, and he fell asleep immediately. I threw his dirty clothes away in a dumpster on the way home. In the morning, he didn't remember any of it, but he was pretty stumped about where his favorite shorts had gone. I felt so stealthy. I'd like to think he would do the same for me. I guess it's more my secret now. Story 20. A close family friend got an 18-year-old girl pregnant while he was on and off with his high school sweetheart. Now, the girl stays in the college town and doesn't really go out. They are trying to keep it from spreading around our town. He comes back every weekend. He's also quite a mess. He hasn't graduated from college because he's into drugs, bad crowds, and get-rich-quick schemes. She wants to give the baby up for adoption. His parents are pushing him to keep it, or at least have them adopt it. They're hoping that his older brother or sister will offer to adopt the child, I think. Either way, everyone is trying to keep it very hush-hush. I'm not sure the high school sweetheart knows. I'm not supposed to know. Edit. In all likelihood, she does know. I'm not going to cause family drama when they need to stay on good terms with him so someone else can adopt the child if he doesn't step up. I only know because someone was having a bad day, was stressed, and a little inebriated. I'm not ruining their family future because some half-wit girl who knows this guy is bad news may or may not know about the baby, which in less than 9 months will most likely become public knowledge, especially if anyone in the family adopts it. Story 21. A former coworker of mine is a mid-20s lesbian, currently engaged to a girl who basically brought her to this area. That's not the secret. The secret is that she's recently realized she doesn't love her fiancé. She's actually crushing on her fiancé's best friend but doesn't know what to do. In a related incident, 2 supervisors from the same department played a particularly mean prank on another supervisor. They took the phone of a girl he was crushing on, who worked at a sister location, and texted him things that made him believe she was interested in him. By the time he realized what had happened, the girl was creeped out, and he had to submit paperwork to HR. Story 22. One of my closest friends secretly cross-dresses, and he doesn't know that I know. He's ex-military and has been to prison. He's a tough guy who grew up with a man's man. Image: fixing cars, farm work, metalworking, working out, and so on. I found his cross-dressing kit while helping him move. I picked up a box from under his bed to make sure it wasn't something fragile before tossing it in a pile. Inside were fake breasts, a bra, panties, and some dresses folded with some of his jeans cut to look like Daisy Dukes. I put it back where I found it and continued moving other boxes downstairs. None of us would care if he told us, but it's his secret if he wants to keep it. Story 23. I had a job where we occasionally had to drive for work. We had to provide abstracts periodically and carry third-party liability. One day, my coworker came in saying he had lost his license from too many speeding tickets. Not a huge deal for the company. There were other drivers. One night, while we were out for drinks, he told me the real reason he lost his license. He is in the country illegally, and his U.S. license had expired. He had been dodging some criminal trouble back home and came up to Canada. He's a nice guy and assured me it was just some minor stuff back home, so I kept his secret. Last I checked, he was still up here. Story 24. 6 years ago, my fiance's sister Gemma got pregnant and then had an abortion in secret. Afterwards, she struggled with her grades, dropped out of several schools, and changed her friendship groups multiple times. Last year, Gemma finally managed to graduate from high school through a flexible learning center, but her patterns with friends remain the same, and she cannot keep a job. She struggles greatly with her weight and self-esteem. She holds everyone at arm's length, choosing to distance herself emotionally, whereas before she had been extremely friendly and outgoing, valuing her close friends deeply. She also fosters a child who is the same age her own child would have been had she not had the abortion. The child's mother is still alive and in contact, but Gemma encourages the child to call her mum. She is overly attached to this child and lives in constant fear that the birth mother will take her baby away. Gemma is mentally unstable and too emotionally immature to properly care for the child, and I genuinely fear for both of them. I know Gemma would benefit immensely from counseling and support from her family. She has never properly dealt with the loss of her child. I've spoken to her many times, but she is unwilling to share her secret with the family, who are very conservative. I don't want to ruin any relationships, but I know that if Gemma continues down this path, it could be very destructive, especially now that a child is involved. I want what is best for both of them, but I don't know what to do. Story 25. This is my dad's secret. My little sister is the golden child in the family. As far as she knows, she is American-born and raised. She knows her mother is from Russia and that they dated shortly after my mother and father divorced. The secret she doesn't know is that it's all false. My dad cheated on my mother with her mother while in Russia, then came back to the United States with the baby. My parents divorced, and he married the Russian woman and started a new family. No one else in his life knows about this. Eventually, she will have to see her birth certificate, but I don't know if he tampered with it or not. I found out from my aunt after she had had too much wine. My father confessed and begged me not to tell her, so I've kept my mouth shut. Story 26. My buddy, let's call him Bob, and his wife have been trying to conceive for a while. The stress got to them last fall, and they split for about 2 months. They made amends in December, and less than 2 weeks later, they announced they were pregnant. Hooray, right? What Bob doesn't know is that she repeatedly hooked up with another buddy of ours, let's call him Chuck, during their separation, right up until they got back together. I'm 99% sure the baby is Chuck's, not Bob's. Story 27. When I joined the USMC, I went to boot camp with a bunch of people. One of them, let's call him John, ended up being stationed on the other end of the state from me. One weekend, he calls and says, "Hey, new accounter, let's get together in Los Angeles this weekend." I say cool, and we meet up in Hollywood that Friday. I was seeing a girl, let's call her Claudia, so I called her to ask if she had any female friends who would want to hang out. She said yes, but mentioned that 2 of her guy friends wanted to come too. She asked if I was okay with them staying in our room, a studio suite at the Renaissance Hotel, since they were gay, and she wasn't sure how we'd take it. I told her I didn't care, but I'd ask John. He said that as long as they didn't try to hook up with him, he was fine with it. So that Friday night, we all meet up at our suite. Claudia, a cute Russian girl she knew, and the 2 guys whose names I remember, I'll call them James and Smith, joined us. We all got pretty drunk and headed out to the club. Partway through the night, Smith somehow got into the DJ booth and grabbed the mic. I guess he knew the DJ because the spotlight hit me and Smith yelled, "Hey, after party at that dude's suite, Renaissance Hotel, room 1539. Biob, bishes, and booze." I responded, "Dude, I thought you were gay." "Shut up, new accounter." "Okay." After the club closed, we went back to my room, and sure enough, there were about 30 people in the hallway. I'm a young, drunk Marine, so I say, screw it, and we party. Towards the end of the night, Claudia and I are in bed doing our thing. I look up and see John watching us from the couch. Kind of weird, but okay. Then I notice the head of the cute Russian girl bobbing in his lap. Wait, that's not the head of the... Dude, get the F off, John. Smith hops up with an audible pop sound. Like when you pull a bee sucker out of your mouth, gives a little hey hey, and runs out. I jump up to stop John from killing him once he realizes what's happening. But John passes out cold. Whatever. Claudia and I go back to doing our thing. The next morning, our room looks like Irish Normandy. Bodies and bottles were everywhere. John had the cute Russian girl snuggled up to him. I went to take a leak and found a topless girl passed out on an equally scantily clad guy in the tub. I checked pulses. They were all okay. People slowly filtered out of the room. The last to leave were the Russian girl and Claudia. John finally came to, hit the bathroom, came out, and laughed. "Dude, what happened last night?" His eyes went wide. "Dude, the heck happened last night?" "Nothing. Why?" "Dude, don't lie to me. Did I hook up with the Russian chick?" "Dude, you totally hooked up with the Russian chick." 8 years later, I still can't bring myself to tell him the truth. Story 28. A friend told me he was smitten with a girl he liked. He even said she was about 95% the one, and asked me for advice. I kicked him in the ass and told him to ask her out. I later found out that the girl already had a boyfriend she was living with at the time, but is now secretly dating my friend. Things got even weirder when I discovered that her boyfriend was a friend of a family member of mine, and I accidentally ran into both of them at my family member's party. Awkward doesn't even cover it. I've never sweated so much at a party. Eventually, the girl left her boyfriend to live with my friend. My family member and the girl's now ex-boyfriend are still friends, completely oblivious that I know all the parties involved or that I had anything to do with her leaving him. The girl and my friend are now married with a kid. Since then, I've had to make sure no one ever runs into each other again, even on Facebook. Keeping your dirty secret really takes a toll. Story 29. My neighbors below me in my apartment complex are an Indian family with one child. They usually hang out with other Indian friends, and I haven't seen a white person over at their apartment even once. A few nights ago, I was walking my dog late, around 11 p.m., when a white girl, dressed nicely with great makeup, asked me how to get to his apartment. I pointed her in the right direction. Without being nosy, I noticed she knocked on the door and he invited her in. I'm almost certain she was an S-worker, and his wife and daughter were out of town at the time. It feels very awkward knowing something like that about my neighbors. Story 30. My brother is a piece of garbage. He beats his wife and has intimidated her so badly that she won't do anything about it. They've been together for 11 years and have 2 children, and she's pregnant again. They have a lot of financial problems due to drug and alcohol issues. They haven't had running water for months. The children are afraid of him, so they stay next door with my parents most of the time, and my parents are enabling this behavior. I'm scared about what might happen when my parents aren't around. I take care of the kids when I can, but I have a family of my own. I desperately want to report them to child services, but I'm afraid my family will disown me. I'm not sure if that would be a bad thing. Story 31. I bought a tablet from a guy on Craigslist who looked about 30. He forgot to reset it so I could access all of his social media accounts and even his mom's Amazon account. I could see his Facebook conversations in real time. From what I could gather, this guy was a mess. Several juicy conversations later, I discovered why he sold the tablet. He wanted to buy pills. A previous conversation with his aunt revealed that he had a meeting with his probation officer and promised he wouldn't do drugs again. He said he was going to find a job and turn his life around. Even further back, there were several conversations from concerned family members and even old high school staff, like his coach, trying to give him advice and letting him know they were there for him. From his messages, it's clear he's a pathological liar. In one moment, he's saying all the things his concerned elders and friends want to hear, and the next, he's buying drugs, talking trash, and hitting on girls. Oh, did I mention he had a girlfriend? I got the tablet while they were in the middle of a breakup. His ex had a job, a car, and broke up with him for cheating. He denied it, again and again, while messaging the girl he had cheated with. At some point, his side girl stopped answering, and he began pestering anyone who owed him money. He even ranted to his high school coach about owing him $5. At this point, the guy was clearly grasping at straws. In another message, he asked his mom to pick him up, and it turned out he had been using the internet at the local library. By then, I was just depressed. It was no longer entertaining. I did, however, add a bunch of black fake dongs to his mom's Amazon wish list, which I assume he had used to buy a Philadelphia Eagles wallet and pheromone spray to attract women. After that, I finally reset the tablet to default, like he should have done in the first place. Story 32. A few years ago, I met this girl through a friend. We went out a few times and slowly stopped seeing each other, but not before she met some of my other friends. Flash forward about 6 months and one of my buddies lands a new job. So I do what any good friend does and take him to a strip club. While we're enjoying ourselves, I text some other friends to join us. Then my buddy notices a dancer on stage who draws his attention. He sits front and center. She looks strangely familiar. She gets down, spreads her legs in front of him, looks at me, puts a finger to her lips, does the little shh motion, and gives him a show. Then it clicks. It's her. I text her, assuming she meant don't tell anyone, and explained that before I saw her, I asked our mutual friend to come join us. About 10 minutes later, she replies, flipping out. She had just started a week ago, hadn't told anyone, and now I have to convince my buddy not to come because our mutual friend, a total gossip, might find out and tell everyone. I agreed to keep her secret, but it was too late. My friend had already arrived, so I proceeded to buy him drink after drink, getting him nicely inebriated. He was a small guy, and since we were celebrating, it wasn't hard. When her turn came to take the stage again, I looked at my friend. He had a really weird look on his face. Gears were turning. I figured her cover was blown for sure. Worse yet, he was in love. He proceeded to spend his entire bankroll on her. Between each set, she would rush backstage, texting me to ask if he recognized her. He was looking for her everywhere and wanted a private dance, and she kept texting me. I couldn't help but laugh to myself, wondering why I was even doing this. At the end of the night, I got a super long free lap dance, tons of thank yous, and a story I've only told my wife so far. I may have omitted a few parts when I told her. Story 33. I have a female friend who told me that after her divorce, she made an arrangement with a male neighbor, allegedly unmarried, to meet from time to time. Her goal was to become very skilled at giving blowies, hoping it would increase her value for a future partner. She claims to be an expert, although I was never interested in verifying it myself. While she is an attractive, slim blonde, and a single mom too, knowing about her activities actually decreased her attractiveness for me rather than increasing it. She asked me never to tell anyone in our circle of friends, and I haven't. Story 34. About 15 years ago, my boss at the time, who is now a really good friend and the godfather to my eldest son, told me one night how he hated the idea of being a 40-year-old virgin. He was very successful, and his family is worth millions from the biomass fuel industry. His problem was that he was privately educated, had no local friends, and lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere, so the only people he really knew were business acquaintances or employees. I suggested he come out socially with my friends and me, but he didn't mix well. Eventually, I introduced him to the idea of escorts. He had a little fun for a while, and then after maybe 6 months, he told me he had met someone. I feared the worst, that he'd fallen for an escort. But Tina, real name Marianne, is actually really cool. I'm the only person who knows how he met her and what she used to do. They've been married for 8 years now, and he's a completely different person. Story 35. I don't usually tell people when I find out something bad about someone else, since I don't believe in burning bridges. I just can't make myself do it. But I have met a few people who act like perfectly good people, and if you didn't know them well, you might assume that's who they really are. For example, I knew a girl who everybody assumed was super nice. In reality, she had never trusted anyone in her life and acted like she couldn't trust anybody. You know the type. Backstabs you before you can backstab them. If this behavior is aimed at random people, it's annoying and makes you unlikable. But peer pressure tends to balance the scales. If you're a jerk for no reason, most people won't like you, and word gets around. However, this girl only backstabbed people who would have been close to her if she were capable of trusting others. Essentially, she targeted only those who trusted her, and seriously hurt them in the process. It was unpleasant to watch, but word never really got out because the people she hurt were written off as too jaded to be unbiased. The next one I'm thinking of was a different girl, a massive hypocrite. She had a very innocent friend who lost her virginity before college. The friend realized she didn't want to be a good Christian girl anymore. No judgment. Your morals are your own business if you're not hurting anyone. But this other girl was a total bitch about it. Oh, she's drinking. That makes her a bad person. Oh, she's physically involved with people she's not in a serious relationship with. All that jazz. I saw the friend change, and I made sure she didn't hurt anyone, but otherwise stayed out of it. Her life, her business. Then the girl cheated on her boyfriend with some guy she didn't know. The poor kid was heartbroken, but she had the audacity to say it was all his fault because she never saw him. This was BS. I hung out with him a few times when he found out she was blowing him off to see other people, and he could never get her to make time for him. After that, she started drinking heavily. But to the best of my knowledge, she still acts like she has the moral high ground over her friend. She's been convinced for literal years that her friend is an idiot and makes jokes about how she's too stupid to get them. Real piece of crap, that girl. To mix things up, this next one is about a guy I knew in high school. I was friends with his girlfriend before they started dating. Over the summer, he went away somewhere, and I hung out with a friend group a few times that included his girlfriend. He was jealous of her spending time with anyone else, even in group settings, and eventually convinced himself she must be cheating on him with me. He cheated on her in retaliation and was generally emotionally abusive until she broke up with him later. I never told anyone about it because he made it publicly known that he didn't like me and I didn't care enough to respond. It also felt petty to start spreading things about him on a happier note. A distant friend of mine attempted self-harm a few years back. Apparently none of her closer friends cared, and when she told me, I was the first person who did. I managed to talk her down from later attempts and helped her get on antidepressants because I couldn't always be there for her. Since she felt it made her look weak, she asked me to keep it quiet and not tell anyone we both knew. We've become pretty good friends because of all that, and she's doing much better now, so I'm calling this one a happy ending. Story 36. I work at a hospital and recently started fooling around with a new employee, never on the clock. Things moved pretty fast. We liked each other and really hit it off. Then, out of nowhere, she told me her live-in boyfriend, the father of her child, was acting better and not doing as many pills anymore, so she wanted to try again with him. I was floored because I genuinely thought she was single. Otherwise, I never would have started anything with her. Now she expects me to be cool with this situation, yet she still gets jealous when I'm around other women or when I don't pick up extra shifts just to work with her. When she and her boyfriend are on the outs, I'm her go-to guy. But she's angry because I refuse to be anyone's second choice. I'm tempted to call the guy and show him the texts and all the affectionate things she said to me. But that would either tear their family apart for good or leave me dealing with an angry coworker and her gun-obsessed pill-using boyfriend. Story 37. My step-siblings think very little of their father and my mother because of their biological mother. She told them that my mother convinced their father to divorce her so my mother could be with him. She also claims that my biological father wasn't an abusive drunk and that my mother fabricated everything to make her story more dramatic. What they don't know, because they were just toddlers at the time, is that I was old enough to know the truth. Their mother actually left their father 3 times for different men. The 3rd time was the last straw. On all occasions, she was pregnant around the time of her departures. The middle child is definitely his. The youngest is another man's. And the oldest has never been tested, though timing and genetics strongly suggest they aren't his. My stepfather refuses to pursue the issue since all of the other men are losers, and it would devastate the oldest. We are all over 30 now and have lived with this lie our entire lives. I sit in silence as they praise their mother as a saint while bashing their father and my mother as cheaters and liars. I do this out of love for him and respect for his wishes. I tell myself that at his funeral, I will finally drop the bomb. Story 38. I work as an executive at our bank, and there is a woman in her early 30s who often makes suggestive remarks about her and her husband's intimate life. It's not unusual for her to work late. One night, while driving by the bank, I noticed her office light was still on and assumed she or the cleaning crew had forgotten to turn it off. I went inside and immediately saw that the alarm hadn't been set. Normally, we would call the police, but I saw her car and her husband's pickup in the parking lot, so I decided to check around. They weren't upstairs, but the hallway light to the basement was on. As I went down, I heard moaning from the kitchen. Looking around the corner, I saw her on the table with her husband. I was nervous, so I quietly left. The next day, I arrived at work early and cleaned the table with kitchen cleaner to be sure it was sanitized. Story 39. I know a famous YouTube personality who publicly presents himself as a family man, Christian, and all-around good guy. In reality, he steals money, cheats his workers, and stages pranks. He's planning to release a book explaining why he staged one prank he got caught for, while not revealing the reasons behind others he's staged. I have proof of several additional pranks he's orchestrated. He is highly manipulative and is also alleged to have sold counterfeit items to a comic store in Southern California. Story 40. There was a guy in my department at a state job, maintenance work, decent pay with benefits, around $45,000 a year. He got fired, but the union fought for him and after about a year, succeeded in getting his job back. The notable part is that when he returned, he received back pay for the entire time he was gone, about $35,000 after taxes. The kicker? He didn't want to pay the union. He complained and argued about them wanting their money, around $800 for nearly a year of work fighting to get him reinstated. He ended up getting fired again, over it. Story 41. I have 2 best friends. Let's call them Batman and Superman. Batman has been dating Catwoman for years, and Superman is single. I'm extremely close to both of them. Then, Catwoman, being the sleazy person she is, ends up sleeping with Superman. So, one of my best friends sleeps with the other's girlfriend. The condom breaks. Superman is strong, of course, and she might be pregnant. Superman gets me to help him buy Plan B. I know everything, and I've spent the last 3 years keeping it a secret from Batman. If I tell him, I lose Superman as a friend for breaking his trust. If I don't tell him and he finds out, I lose Batman. I guess I should just stick to Marvel. Story 42. A guy I know had a kid with his ex-girlfriend, but it came out of nowhere. She hid the pregnancy for 7 months and only told him after they broke up, literally a week before the child was born. Her father retired to help take care of the baby and she dropped out of university. She got him for child support and he's now working 2 jobs to pay for it. It's a shame how both their futures are affected. It was her choice to keep it, but hiding it until a week before the birth was unfair. He was embarrassed because she posted about the birth on Facebook before he even had the courage to tell us. He didn't even know she was in labor until he saw that post. People can do messed up things. Story 43. I work at a mental health facility and have a coworker I absolutely dislike. She used to be a patient at our facility, which is fine by policy as long as it wasn't in the last 5 years. The problem is, she was a patient only 2 years ago. To clarify, seeking mental health treatment at any point is allowed, but it must be at a different facility to avoid dual relationships. Our supervisor got busy and didn't run the entire hiring group through medical records before offering positions. If he knew anyone found out about his mistake, he'd fire her immediately. I hate her personally, but she's good at her job, and the secret eats at me every time she does something awful. It would solve so many of my work headaches, but I could never use someone's mental health history against them like that. Story 44. I work for my dad's company, and his business partner is the biggest jerk around. Let's call him Bob, to keep it simple. Bob constantly talks about money, brags about his huge house, and once spent over $5,000 on a 10-year anniversary ring for his wife. A while back, Bob screwed my dad over. They were supposed to rent out an apartment and split the income. Originally, Bob and his wife owned it, and it was agreed my dad would join later after some details were sorted out. Bob denied all knowledge and still owns the apartment today. Meanwhile, my dad has gone through a divorce and a serious car accident, while Bob has been living it up with his wife and 2 kids. What Bob doesn't know is that I have good reason to believe his wife has had at least one affair since their children were born. Story 45. A friend and I were walking down a pretty isolated road in town to get to our car after the Maroon 5 show. It was probably around 4 a.m. since we had hung around a local cafe after the concert. Suddenly, a man approached us with a handgun. He put the gun to my head and threatened to shoot me if I didn't hand over our car keys, money, and cell phones. My friend is usually a really happy guy, always smiling, always joking around. But the moment the gun was pressed to my head, it was like the happy person I knew disappeared. He stared into my eyes as if looking straight into my soul, and there was nothing there, only coldness and death. An aura of pure menace radiated from him, making my body tremble and my mind spiral. Then, almost impossibly, he seemed to transfer all that intensity onto the criminal. The man with the gun immediately trembled, overwhelmed by the sheer, terrifying presence before him. He swiftly lifted the criminal's arm with his left hand, forcing him to fire a shot into the air. Then, with a powerful punch to the ribs, he brought the man to his knees. A kick and a push sent the criminal flat on his back. Without hesitation, he broke the man's hand and took the weapon, pointing it at his head while he lay on the ground. Then came words I'll never forget. Only shoot when you're prepared to get shot yourself. As the criminal began to beg for mercy and apologize, he delivered 2 shots to the chest and 1 to the head. Afterward, he used his Swiss Army knife to cut a piece of the man's jeans close to where his blood had fallen on his foot and leg. After that, he pointed the gun at my head and put his fingers on my lips, as if telling me to forget everything I had seen. He then cleaned the gun of fingerprints with a tissue and walked away as if nothing had happened. Later that night, as we walked back to our car in a more populated part of town, someone asked about the blood on his leg. He calmly said he had fallen on the street and even showed the cut he had made himself. The next day, he was the same cheerful, happy guy he had always been. It was as if the cold, soulless person I had seen the night before had died alongside the criminal. Story 46. I work for the county in a small town and share a cubicle farm-type office space with several other county and town employees. So, where do I even begin? The woman in charge of payroll secretly dated a guy from the highway department for a while. He's 43 and has had ED for 15 years because of antidepressants. When she told me, my heart broke a little. The county treasurer is cheating on her husband with one of the local cops. She doesn't know that he knows. That same cop has been involved with her sister for the past few years as revenge. The town marshal is frequently drunk at work. The former director of public works was allowed to resign after getting in trouble for attempting to help rig an election. He's also a reserve police officer, and if his church congregation knew, it would be awkward. He's a minister. The current director of public works is a lesbian, but keeps it on the down low. She recently demoted an employee for being lazy and basically worthless. When asked about it, she panicked and claimed it was because the employee was at retirement age and they wanted to promote some new blood. There's a lawsuit pending that only about 4 people outside the state judicial system know about. Age discrimination is apparently a big deal. The county prosecutor has misappropriated a huge amount of funds. The county also passed a wage and salary ordinance that is highly illegal, and the state is now investigating. And the juiciest one, the one that's going to cause the most damage, a council member's cousin owns a contracting company that just happens to win all the bids for every construction project the town has undertaken in the past few years. It's a classic small-town corruption story, which makes those of us in the know wonder how the council members involved could be so careless. We figure it's a perfect storm. Old, out-of-touch council members who don't understand how fast information spreads these days, publicly accessible financial records, and of course, good old-fashioned greed. Together, it's formed a cancerous web of corruption of epic proportions. Story 47. I know a guy who, in his youth, once dressed up as a courier and walked into a computer manufacturer's shipping department, managing to walk out with a large shipment of laptops. He sold them to friends and acquaintances, shipping them one by one to Jamaica. Apparently, computers are extremely expensive there, and the selection is very limited, in exchange for cash. It's not all bad, though. He used the money to open a store in his neighborhood and provides work for some friends who might have otherwise ended up in more gangster-like lines of work. Story 48. I used to be friends with a guy for about 7 years until around 2010 when I finally had to tell him off. He had a habit of making things up and was starting to get really clingy, showing up to pick me up from work at midnight without me asking. He'd send a message asking if I needed a ride, and an hour later announce, "Okay, I got it. I'll be there at midnight." In 2011, I got a new job at a supermarket and transferred to a store that had just had its grand opening, really close to me. Lo and behold, he was one of the security guards there. Talk about karma. He lasted 7 months. During that time, I rarely said hi, made things awkward, and never told anyone there I knew him. People would bring him up to me, commenting on how clearly made up some of the things he said were. Here's the dirty little secret. He eventually got fired. Keep in mind, he was in his mid-30s at this time. He was fired for essay, and I heard of at least 2 different cashiers involved, both around 18 to 20 years old. I'm friends with a lot of people who knew him back when we worked at the same movie theater years ago, but I won't say anything. I'll just stay polite. Story 49. A few years ago, my parents went through a period where they fought nonstop, didn't trust each other, and a whole bunch of other issues. One day, my mom had enough and moved out to a new place about 15 minutes away. My brother stayed with my dad, and I moved out with my mom. They never got a divorce or officially separated, and after a couple of months, we ended up moving back in. What my dad doesn't know is that while we were living in the other house, my mom had a guy, not necessarily a boyfriend, but someone she met through a friend. He would take her out a lot, and at least a few times a week, I could hear him sneaking into her room and leaving early in the morning. I used to try bringing it up with her, telling her she needed to tell my dad, but she would get very defensive and shut me down, even at the mere mention of his name. Story 50. In college, husband's roommate and his girlfriend were part of a fraternity that didn't have gender restrictions. The girlfriend was one of the senior members, and new recruits, called littles, looked up to the seniors as mentors. One day, the roommate brought home one of his girlfriend's littles while she was out of town. Instead of hanging out with the rest of us, his other 2 roommates, me and some college friends, he took the little to his room and closed the door to watch a movie. His room shares a wall with the bathroom. While I was washing my hands, I heard a girl moan and a guy say, "Shh, they'll hear us." I don't know what movie they were supposedly watching, but it sounded like they were getting busy. I told my husband, but he didn't believe me, even though I pointed out the obvious. They were alone in a bedroom with the door closed, ignoring the rest of us, and my roommate was a sneaky slimeball. I wasn't that close with the roommate's girlfriend, so I didn't feel right bringing it up, especially since no one would back me up. She was better friends with the guys in the house than with me. Now, the roommate and his girlfriend have been married for about 5 years and are having a baby via in vitro fertilization. I'm going to her baby shower in a few months. They're happy, and he seems way less sleazy now. But that night still lingers in the back of my mind, in a dark little corner. I know what you did, Dan. Story 51. I once worked for a company that hid the tooling costs of its imported goods from U.S. Customs to avoid paying tariffs on the value of tooled imports. At any moment, any employee could file a whistleblower claim under qui tam and bring the whole thing down. The whistleblower would receive about 1/3 of whatever the government recovers in unpaid tariffs. Plus, the company would be fined $10,000 for every single instance of underreporting. It would destroy the company overnight, but here's why no one has done it. Over the last decade, the unpaid duties only add up to around $350,000. A whistleblower would get roughly $120,000, minus attorney fees, so maybe $60,000 in the end. And that's the dilemma. Someone angry enough could decide that 1 year's salary is worth detonating the entire operation, but that choice would instantly put 600 people out of a job. Story 52. My mom and 2 aunts all had baby girls around the same time. My aunts always criticized my mom, saying she must not be a great mom since I turned out liberal and not religious. One of my cousins got pregnant 2 years ago at 18 by her boss at KFC and made him marry her. Less than a year after her baby was born, she got pregnant again because her husband is Catholic. She's now 19 with 4 kids, and her stepchildren hate her. She's depressed and spends most of her days in her bedroom with her 2 babies. Her mom is heartbroken. My other aunt cut off all communication with her daughter when she got pregnant. That daughter is now 18 and thrilled because her boyfriend is forced to marry her. Of the 3 cousins, I'm the only one who wasn't a teen mother. My boyfriend and I are talking about moving in together after we get our associate degrees. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.